we had students who went in this year who did not pass, who went in with a 98% probability of passing. And they, not just on one, but on the free 120 and 2 other MBMEs.
I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Dr. Arlene Sachs, Director of Student Academic Support Services and Clinical Assistant Professor of Psychiatry at UT Southwestern Medical Center. Dr. Sachs has a fascinating background. She earned her PhD from Vanderbilt in learning disabilities and cognition, spent decades researching effective learning strategies, and in 1985 founded Academic Bridges, a private educational practice that grew to 18 specialized tutors. Today, Dr. Sachs runs a comprehensive 6-week Step 1 dedicated program, in addition to many other things, where she personally meets with every single medical student. What drew me to her work is her data-driven approach. She can tell you exactly what happened when Step 1 went pass-fail, and frankly, the results were pretty alarming. So, beforehand, the pass rate was 100% pass rate. And after that, it made a pretty big difference, which we'll talk about. So I'm excited to discuss keys to success in medical school exams and how she helps students who've never failed before navigate their first major setbacks. So Dr. Sachs, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Palmerton. I'm really happy to be here to share some of my experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with, how did you end up as the Director of Student Academic Support Services at UT Southwestern?
So the Director of Student Wellness at that time found me on LinkedIn, and I was in private practice at that time, and also a lecturer at the University of Texas at Dallas. And Dr. Wiles approached me and asked me if I would like to apply for this position. And I said to him, "You need a learning specialist at a medical school? That's surprising to me." And as it turned out, yes. And now there are medical education learning specialists in all medical schools across the country. And internationally, I know as well. But he invited me to apply. I applied, and I was excited because the things that they wanted me to do here were very similar to what I was doing in my private practice. So the learning curve for me was not as great as I expected it to be. And students came to see me, and I was able to help them competently. And it's been a real treat.
So what were the kinds of things that you were doing before you were at UT Southwestern?
So I was at UT Dallas, and I taught courses after my graduate program. I came here to teach at University of Texas at Dallas, and I taught in the School of Brain and Behavior. And in that school, I taught learning disabilities to people working on their master's degree. And I also taught cognition. And then I was invited to teach a class called The Nature of Intellectual Inquiry, which was a science and philosophy course, which was totally different than anything I had ever done. So that was an interesting gig for a while. And then I left UT Dallas and started my private practice because I really wanted to work with young people of all ages to help them with their learning. And that was much more satisfying to me at that point in my career. So I started Academic Bridges, and I tutored children with study strategies, and I did psychoeducational testing, which was really part of my background to learn more about how people learned. And I worked very closely with their parents and with the schools they were enrolled in to help them navigate their learning in that way. What I found in that private practice was it was really a matter of helping young people in rigorous academic programs succeed, and teaching them study strategies, but also helping them with their confidence and helping their parents back off a little bit. So that was a real enlightening time for me.
I bet. I mean, so you essentially were teaching. Not only are you able to do psychoeducational testing, but you've actually taught it for many years in your career.
Yes.
I've spoken with a number of learning specialists, and that's actually a pretty rare skill set to have for someone in your position. Do you find that that's been true?
Yes, that's true. And what's really great is that I can use those skills with the medical school here, and also the graduate program and the health professions program, We also have a School of Public Health, so I work with all students across campus. But being able to evaluate them, if I need to go more in depth than just a reading test or an ADHD executive functioning screening, I'm able to do a full-blown psychoeducational evaluation. And that really helps them to understand how they learn and how they process information. I don't do that for all students, but it depends on what they need after I interview them, and we're trying to figure out a good plan. So that's how we do it.
Wow. Yeah, I can see that would make a big difference. What would you say is the biggest similarity between, well, I guess I'll preface this with, oftentimes what I find is that the best teachers of something are the ones that have to teach it at some point in their careers to young people. And the reason is that with young people, you can't really skip steps. And so what are the biggest sort of similarities that you see between your work in teaching young people and your work with medical students?
I think, see, one of the biggest things, honestly, is helping them learn how to slow down and give themselves grace to be able to learn the information, to have in medical school, students have the expectation that they should be able to get it and be on and go on with it. Children are the same way. They want to learn it and they want to do it quickly, and it's hard for them to grasp that it may not come as quickly as it might be for one of their peers if they're comparing themselves to somebody else, which I find that to be true with the adult population I work with. So I try to help them, students here anyway, slow down, give themselves grace, and give the information a chance to settle in and go about it where they can learn it in various ways. So I try to break things down for them and give them strategies that are based in cognitive science to be able to manage their study skills. So we talk about uh, space repetition and elaboration and really the importance of self-testing and not being afraid to practice what you don't know. And that's how you can learn from it. And I did the same with the little kids I worked with as well. So,
So not everyone has the access to someone of your expertise. So if I were, let's say that I'm struggling with one of my tests, maybe it's early in medical school, maybe it's, one of the USMLEs, what would be sort of is there anything that I can do to sort of figure out like, okay, where am I stuck? How can I get unstuck?
yeah, to take a minute and think about how you approach learning and really be honest about it. So, what we call metacognitive strategies. So, actually apply some of these metacognitive strategies to uh, the way you learn and analyze it and decide, what am I doing right? What do I need to improve upon? And then I take that information that you've learned that you need to improve upon and try to work on it in a different way. Because if people keep repeating the way they're learning and it's not being effective, they're not going to make any headway. Fortunately, anybody can come to see me here at UT Southwestern. Any student, they don't have to be a struggling student. In fact, I met with a student today who's doing great, but wants to make sure that they're doing things that are really beneficial. So wanting to go beyond just memorizing discrete facts. How am I going to apply those facts, and how am I going to apply it in a clinical setting and be effective with test taking that requires me to think beyond just a fact. And that's sometimes where students in medical school they're not as skilled because they have so much to learn and they're trying to learn all those facts. And then being able to apply that information takes the back seat. And when in fact, if we encourage them to practice test taking strategies and also do practice questions, but not be afraid if they don't know the answer in 2 seconds and get them to practice that way, we find that they can do much better in their courses.
So it sounds like there's a metacognitive aspect of and just being honest with yourself, which frankly in and of itself is pretty challenging. Why do you think that? What do you think makes that so hard for people to sort of assess themselves honestly?
Well, I think we don't like to look at ourselves in the mirror. And that's a hard thing to say, hey, you know what? I really don't understand this. And what do I need to do so that I can improve? Um, and often I think that there's the illusion of knowing. People think they know something if they read it and reread it and read it and not practice it. That they think that that's studying. And so if we can really help them stand back and say, you know what, maybe there's another step here. And one thing I try to help students do is I tell them to teach themselves, if they don't have a study buddy, to use their phone, record what they're trying to say. So make up a question, give the answer into your phone, play it back, and then look at your notes to see, what did you really say? What did you miss? Does it make sense? And
Tell
interestingly,
wait, sorry, tell me more about that. What does that mean? So I would like do a practice question.
yeah, or so for example, you've got your notes and you students often will just say the information into the air, you know, and rather than really be accountable to what they're saying. So they think they know it, but they may not have said everything that they need to say to really answer the question. So they could take a practice question and talk about what the big picture is, what the intervention is, what the treatment is, what are the symptoms, and say it, play it back, listen to it, and look at what correct answer is or what they have on their paper that's going to help them understand it. So they can see, they can hear what they've said. They can then be accountable to the fact that maybe they didn't really cover what they needed to cover. So they don't really know it well enough. Whereas if they keep reading it over and over again, they may not get to the real heart of the matter. That makes sense?
I think so. So it's sort of like there's like you're saying you need to have, I mean, all forms of learning benefit from objective fast feedback, right? And so you're saying that I think if I understand correctly, you're saying I need to, if I record myself and then listen back, I can be more objective than if I'm just saying it myself.
Correct.
And if I listen back to it as soon as I say it, then I can get that sort of fast. I can get the quick
You
element.
can get that feedback and then you can realize what you don't know and what you do know. And then work on the information that you don't know to answer that question in a way that's much more productive.
What's the I mean, you've worked with lots and lots and lots of students over the years. What's been your favorite case? Like, what's been the one where you're like, like you still think of where you're so happy for that person you saw?
Yeah. So for step one, we have very strict parameters here. So I try to encourage the students to not take step until they're really ready. And I had a student a couple of years ago who I adore. And he came in to talk to me and he said, "I just can't get anywhere. I'm not doing well, but I'm doing everything that we talk about." And I said, "Okay, but we just need to do it a little differently. Maybe we need to tweak this." And finally he came back about a week later and said, I just can't do this anymore. This was after 7 weeks of study. And he said, "Dr. Sachs, I jumped out of a plane in Afghanistan and I am going to jump out of a plane. I'm going to dodge this bullet too. I've dodged lots of bullets in my life and I'm going to be okay." And my heart was like, oh my God, oh my God. And he went and took this exam and he passed it. Totally blew me away because he wasn't at the level that I thought he should be to be able to go take that test. But he was able to pull it off and more power to him. And I'm so proud of him. And now he's a resident in medicine and he's doing great.
That's huge. That's wow.
Yeah. And then on his step two, he just blew it out of the water. I mean, there was no issue with him at all. He was able to from his third year medical school, learn from those shelf exams and all the experiences he had in the clinics, and then really apply it well for step 2. So he
I'm
had
sure that there's a lot of things that he has, personally, but that like there was also obviously a lot that you did as well, right? Very clearly you're very invested. What do you think was the one thing that you did that made, or that someone could take away from that made the biggest difference in his case?
the fact that the strength, his power came from his confidence. And he had more knowledge than he was showing on those practice tests. And because he was confident and he believed in himself, I think that's a big part of this step 1 process. If you go in, because students have the knowledge, they've gone through here anyway, they have 18 months of medical school and then they have the exam. And they've got a ton of knowledge. And if they just believe in themselves and they're not afraid of it. So I often see students that are so afraid of the questions that they become paralyzed by that. And if we can get them over the hump of being afraid, which is one thing I try to do in our step 1 course, is working with them on a weekly basis to keep encouraging them to not be afraid. My motto is don't let the test control you. You control it. All these are our words on a page. You don't let those words be in charge of you. You be in charge of those words. And I think that that's a very powerful thing for them to hang on to. And I encourage them, if they are afraid of the exam, the day that they go in, sit down and write, I studied, I know this, and have that sense of self to be able to go and tackle it. Do some have poor test taking strategies? Yes, but they learn it. They can learn those things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I'm kind of to that point. It sounds like belief is based on experience. And so what you're helping people to do is to tap into their prior experiences so that they can see that they really do have the basis to believe in themselves, right? In his case, it's like I jumped out of airplanes. Like, what is this? Like, if I can do that, I can definitely do this, right? And so you helped him see that. We had a similar student where she was an IMG. So she was a non-US IMG. So from Panama. She had failed step 2, and her first NBME when she started studying was a 202, which is like 1 standard deviation below pass. It was like, bottom 1%. She had kind of a similar mindset though. She was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes, right? Because my back is against the wall. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And so we helped her, build on that belief in herself and transform her approach. And in 3 months, she literally went from 202 to 262.
Wow. Yeah.
And she matched, she got rejected from a lot of places because she'd failed previously, but she matched at her top choice. And now she's a fellow in REI, which is like one of the most competitive fellowships, definitely the most competitive for OB, but really one of the most competitive fellowships, period, because it's like the IVF fellowship.
Yeah.
But it's exactly like it's interesting. I never thought about it that way.
That's a great story though. The success that she had.
Well, because she was a professional dancer previously, and she's like, if I can do that, right? It's kind of the same thing, right? She didn't jump out of airplanes, but she was like, if I can get on stage,
Right.
And it's like we all have. I think what I'm hearing from you is like we all have those experiences of like we all have things that we've done in our past that have been really challenging that we've overcome. This is just another one of those, right? This is just another one of those challenges. Let's tap into that strength. Our belief comes from that experience. And we can just use that to help us power through these other challenges.
That's right. Because, for many of the students, they've done very grueling, hard things in their short lifespan. And they forget about that when they struggle a little bit. And then you've got to help them remember that. Remember you could do this. Remember that you were successful. And as long as they can remember it and really believe it, and that's a recipe to win, isn't it?
Yeah, that's powerful. No, your students are very lucky. I mean, again, it's rare to have someone who knows the learning strategies, but also can diagnose learning disability. Like I was diagnosed, if she's with ADHD, and that was like a really eye-opening. I was like, how did I not know this? Like, how did I not detect this earlier? So to have someone who can do that, plus who understands the human side, and they're very lucky.
Well, realizing that there's nothing wrong with you, and that it normalizes it and enables a person to be able to then approach life in a different way rather than saying, "What's the matter with me?" or "How are people going to perceive me if I have ADHD or if I don't read as quickly?"
Yeah. Speaking of setbacks, so we talked off camera about step one and all of the challenges, like sort of unexpected challenges after step one went pass fail. You've had remarkable success with your USMLE Step 1 course. Previous to Step 1 going pass fail, it was like 100% pass rate, correct?
Yeah, it was 100% pass rate when we instigated our dedicated course that really required the students to be accountable. So the first year that we had the dedicated course, it was really remarkable that people responded to our weekly survey monkeys. I kept up with them in that way. They had to answer, and they still do. There's 6 questions I require that they answer. And each week I read their responses and reach out to them, whether they're struggling or not. I email them or I call them in to come and talk with me to make sure everything's okay. And through that dedicated time, we were able to have that 100% pass rate. When it changed was really the next year we had one student who wasn't successful on the first go, but it was for psychological reasons. There were some emotional things going on, and they didn't pass, but they did pass finally. They passed on the second time. And then the next year we had 2, same reasons. And then when it went pass fail, it was like the whole world just changed, and we had many more failures and with the same program. And I think that what happened was it was hard to figure out what the equated percent correct really meant on those MDMEs, what a 98% probability of passing really means, and also the fact that it was pass fail. Students quite didn't understand what that meant, because pass fail sounds like, oh, it's easy. All I have to do is pass. And so I put that on me for not being really clear to them that doesn't mean anything. It's still just as hard. And then the next year, the same thing happened, although we kept telling them that this is not easy, it's going to be hard. And then, but still, you can't be with every student in their house study and telling them this is what you have to do. And it just seems like that the failure rate has just increased since we've changed to pass fail. And the interesting part to me too on this is that those that fail, they do it again, they pass. Some of them don't, but the majority of them do. But then when they get around to their step 2, we're lights out. We're doing great. This year we had 2 students who did not pass, but they did on the second try. They did really well, and they're going to be fine. So, but for the most part, our averages are really high for step 2. So it means we're doing something right in the clerkships and their foundational studying. It's pretty neat to see that.
Well, I mean, I think that mirror is everywhere. I mean, I think that in terms of the step 1 fail rate, I mean, it used to be that I think the 2 years prior to step 1 going pass fail, right? Because it went pass fail, but January 2022. In 2020, if I recall correctly, in 2021, the pass rate was 97 to 98%. I'm pretty sure the year after it went pass fail, the pass rate went to like 91, something like that, 92%. And then it was like 91. So like the failure rate basically 3 to 4x over like a 12-month period. And it's stayed like that. It actually has gotten a little worse, I think, in subsequent years.
Oh, wow.
So it's a massive change. What do you think is the, like, because it's not just, I mean, I applaud you taking it on yourself and saying like, I didn't do enough to, like, honestly, because usually in conversations that I have with administrators, it's not super common to hear someone say, that's on me. Like I didn't do a good job of, warning them or getting them. But what is what do you think is the big difference? Like, what do you, like, why do you think there's such a big change overall?
I think that's such a hard thing to answer because I really do not know. I'm baffled by it because we had students who went in this year who did not pass, who went in with a 98% probability of passing. And they, not just on one, but on the free 120 and 2 other MBMEs. So that was, I thought it was there. And did I see their score reports? No. So we're going to do that now next year. We're having them upload their score reports. And so we can really kind of keep track of that. But I don't really know. I wish I could figure it out.
Yeah,
What do you think?
that's a good question. The answer that I think a lot of people give is, and I'm somewhat partial to this, is that when you're trying, because I took step one in the in the scored era, right? And so like I was trying to score on the top 5%, right?
Why?
Like it's very different because at that point you're not even thinking about passing. Like it never crossed my mind that I would fail that test. My question was like, am I going to score in the top 0.1%, in the top 1%, in the top 5%, in the top 10 or 20%, right? Like that was really what you were aiming for. And because failing is like the bottom, they made the cutoff at the bottom 3%, right? They do that for I think all of the tests.
Yeah.
Right? It's essentially the bottom 3%. So it's like you weren't even thinking about that. But now it's like what used to be the bottom 3% is like 10% of the students of USMLE applicants who, I mean, that's the top 80%. That's like the 80th percentile is of the MCAT is the 50th percentile. It's the mean of matriculants to USMLE schools, right? So you've selected for these really brilliant, hardworking people, and yet now, right, like many, many more, like almost a standard deviation more people are failing than you would have expected.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I think part of it is just that, right? Is just like I would imagine that that and I don't want to put the blame on the med student. There's now so much more emphasis on research, right? To talk about that, like, do you see people sort of like shifting more?
Yes. Yes. Being able to really focus on your coursework is really being pulled from in terms of what students feel like they can prioritize. So the first semester here, we tell them do not get involved in any extracurriculars. If you do, it's got to be one thing at the most. And that's really hard because they come to school gung ho. They're really want to do as much as they can. And they're not used to also floundering because their grades had always been good and undergraduate school for many of them wasn't hard. And then they came to medical school and then that game changed. And I find that because step one is pass fail, they want to prove that they can do other things besides coursework. So they try to do too much. I mean, I even had some students during step one dedicated last year tell me, well, they didn't start studying when we told them to because they were involved in a research project. Well, no, you can't do that. And the PI that you're working for is going to understand that. But it's hard for the med students to see that that's got to be put on the back burner. But we see that through, and they put that research ahead of the studying. And then if your courses are pass fail too, if they just squeak with a 70, then they pass, right? Well, then those students who are just squeaking with that 70 come up to step, and they have to even do more than they would have had they paid attention to the class during the class time. So how do you solve that,
Yeah, it's the ironic thing is that one of the justifications for making step one pass fail was that it was causing so much stress, and that it was taking away, like, no one was paying attention in class because everyone was studying for step one. The ironic thing is that if anything, it's from what you're saying, it sounds like it's actually worse now, because now, like, they're not even, I mean, they're still not paying attention in class, but even more, they're paying even less attention, because like doing research, writing case reports, doing benchtop research is like so much different, even more different than like their step one, prep that they were doing on the side before, when they were,
That's right. And then there are some students that don't spend any time studying for STEP, which we don't want them to, but during the internal medicine blocks, and we give them a plan, we make suggestions of what you can do. But then there are those who just do their coursework and they're making awesome grades. And then they start feeling guilty right around this time, because they haven't done anything for STEP and they think all their friends are doing it, which could be true and couldn't be true. You don't know really what people are doing unless you're with them. But yeah, the student I met with today, he's worried about STEP. He's made great A's in his courses. And he says, I just haven't spent a lot of time doing STEP work. I said, but you are, because you're studying for your courses. And during the summer, he did a bunch of sketchy and first aid and did some questions. So he has been doing those products for STEP, but he's also putting that on the side and paying attention to his courses. And to me, that's more important. You don't want to fail a course and then have to remediate it and then start dedicated STEP later.
Yeah. It feels like people are more, because I looked at the numbers for Match, and for like some of the most competitive specialties like neurosurgery, plastics, ortho, the average number of publications, abstracts, and presentations for the unmatched USMDs is now higher than it was for the matched USMDs for those specialties pre-step one going pass fail.
Wow.
So in other words, the unsuccessful people that don't match into these specialties actually have more research than the people that did match into those same specialties like 5 years ago. And it's like, it's crazy, because it's almost as if people treated, I mean, I can see how someone would think, any extra sort of buffer in my score for step one is sort of like wasted time. I could have used that time to do more research. I could have used that time to do more, and but then it's like you skate really close to that line, and it's like more people are getting burned. So yeah, we see a lot of people who come to us who are like, we just talked to someone recently who was like, I really wanted to do ENT, or I really wanted to do blank, and I failed my USMLE now. Like, what do you do? What do you tell someone like that?
Well, I tell them, well, we just have to work and try to get over this hump here and keep your mind open. You never know what's going to happen. And after step one, you've got all of your clerkships. It's way down the road here. And let's see how you do on step two. So start worrying about the present and not worry about what's going to be what if, because that'll just distract you from reaching your goal. So, we've had a student here who did not pass step and really wanted to go into plastics. And then he knocked step two out of the park. And guess what? He went to plastics. So that doesn't happen all the time, but he was able to do it.
How did you help someone like that? What did you,
Well,
what did you do?
with this student, I spent from the time he started here, we would meet weekly for accountability. This was before he was even didn't pass step one, but we would meet each week. His choice. I didn't tell him he had to. I offered it to him, and I didn't think it was going to last that long. And so we did that for about 6 months. And then he started to fly okay. And then he would come back and we would meet again, talk about how to plan his time better. And I was with him all the way through dedicated step one, and he went on.
What was there any warning that he was going to fail?
He was up and down on his practice tests. And the last one he took, he was up, but I wasn't really quite there. He just wanted to go do it. And I couldn't stop that. So he went and did it, and he was devastated. But then he came back a month later and passed it and did fine in his clerkships. I think that he was so riled up about being successful and wanting to accomplish this goal that he was having a hard time navigating it, because he knew he had to really work hard to get to that goal. And there were times when he was successful and other times when he wasn't. And it was just sort of played on his psyche a little bit.
How did you ultimately get over that?
He was devastated when he didn't pass, but now he's doing something.
Yeah, we had a student kind of like that. I think I may have mentioned it. He'd failed step one. He'd actually scored pretty well in his NBMEs, but like he couldn't get out of bed, and he wanted to do urology. And again, worked with him, helped him transform his approach. He got a 92 on his NBME 2 months later.
Wow.
He just kind of took off at that point, because like he could see like, oh no, I can do this. Like, oh, I like, kind of like what you were saying before with the guy that was jumping on airplanes, right? It's like he was kind of doing the equivalent of jumping out of airplanes. He's like, I can do this. Oh, this is like, I'm capable. He scored a lot better on step two, and he ended up matching into urology at like a great program. And so but it's kind of the same thing. It's like, I think he'd put so much pressure on himself early, and then it's just, you have to learning how to overcome that. Well, how do you help people do that? Like, what do you do to help people overcome that sort of that pressure that they feel of like, I have to do this or else?
Yeah. Well, I tried to find out what's at the root of it, and I will also send them to our student wellness program, because I feel like they're going to need more than just me to help them. Not being a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist, I can't really help somebody if there's some deep-seated things that need to be dealt with, and teaching them some strategies that are beyond my skill level. So that's what I normally do. If I notice that a student is struggling in that way, I refer them. And there are times that I walk them to the place and say, go in here to make an appointment, and then come back and tell me what day your appointment is. So I'm sure they've actually gone through with it.
I get the sense that there's a lot of, one aspect of what you're doing is also just accountability, right? You've mentioned this a couple of times, right? The accountability of your weekly check-ins, the accountability of with that student that matched into plastic surgery. Tell me more about that.
Well, so I give that to them as an option. So if they want to work with me, and I tell them, whatever time of day you email, I will respond. Don't worry about it. If it's on a weekend, I will check my emails. But let's just do this, hold our hands, and I'm here for you. I'm not your mother, but I'm here to help you. And I want you to have your rational, logical mind working when we are trying to do this job together. And I just help them with that. And the accountability is useful for many of them, because they know I'm not judging them. And that part, we get over that quickly, because they feel safe. And I don't reprimand them or, I don't do things to them that make them feel small. I help them find joy in the things that they can accomplish. So to me, if they write me an email saying I got 3 things out of the 5 things we talked about doing, then I tell them, great, that's reasonable. You did it. You accomplished what you set out to do. Now those 2 things that you didn't do, let's add that to next week. So I try to help them see how to manage their energy and their time in a realistic way, because often they want to solve world peace rather than stick to what they need to do and be methodical about it. Sometimes students will lose their rational self and they get caught in this tailspin and just spiral. And they just need somebody, a grown-up, to be there with them to hold their hand a little bit and not feel like it's babying them.
As we wrap up, I'm curious to know, what is one piece of unconventional advice? So something that, maybe they you find is, maybe goes against conventional wisdom even, or just isn't typically found that you found makes the biggest difference for medical students preparing for these high stakes exams?
Well, let's see. That's a good question. I think that the most unconventional advice that I give them is just take a break. Okay. If you can't study during the day, that's okay. Consider that part of your study plan, because you don't feel guilty studying. So you shouldn't feel guilty taking a break, and consider that part of your day, and you're going to be better the next day. So I think that helps them get a realistic view of, oh, I can't even take a shower, or I can't even watch Netflix for 5 minutes. It's okay. Rattle it around. And sometimes I'll take them to dinner. Sometimes I'm not supposed to do. It's called boundary. But, sometimes students need that, to feel like they've got somebody who cares.
Wow. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people that will listen to this who will think, I wish I could follow you. I wish I could, I wish I had a Dr. Sachs. If people wanted to follow you or learn more about you, what would be the best way for them to do so?
Oh, they could email me here, and I'm happy to chat with them.
That's fantastic. Perfect. And so again, Dr. Sachs, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and your wisdom.
Well, thank you for including me in this. I really appreciate it.
What if you could walk into step 1 already knowing you'll pass? Students who have failed their exams can become comfortable passes in as few as 3 weeks using one proven system. They stop copying what worked for others and instead use a framework that fits how step 1 actually works. In my next video, I'll show you the exact 10-step system that virtually guarantees a step 1 pass. Click here to watch now.